জয়েন করো, জয়েন করো।
আমি বলতে দিলাম এইটা বন্ধ করে দিলাম
এটা দেয়া আছে।
Good morning. Chandra Secretary Center for Women's Studies, State University, welcomes you all to this first webinar for Gender Inequalities, Strategies for Survival. We have been struck with the unprecedented crisis of global pandemic, which has stressed our lives. There is fear, there is trauma, there is loss of lives, there is major layoff in the job market. We have been with spread all such consequences. It's time for us to ponder over that what can be the consequences, or what can be the result of this post-COVID thing for the women, because it affects, when we say gender, it affects actually all the sectors of the society, whether it's men, women, or children. We are more concerned about the women because we see in the major workforce participation as such is far visible, and with this COVID, we have seen that it has preceded lockdowns and major layoffs has broken those back. Today, we are going to ponder over a few questions. I don't say that we will come to a solution, but we can be discussing and we can come to reach to certain insights as why is it that is there a possibility that these women can bounce back pre-COVID situation? That is our one. We have with us today Professor Economics, active women's studies. But we have with us Dr. Monica, Chief Officer, Officer, Northeast Network. We have with us today Professor Sheila Bora, Professor of History, who was with the University. Retired from there, was in one university for quite some time, and she has been working in the society in various fields. Today our chairperson is Professor Chandra Kumar Sharma, Professor of Sociology. I will request Dr. Sharma to kindly take over. Thank you. Professor Sharma.
Thank you, Dr. Swami, and I welcome you all to this important webinar on a very important and relevant subject, the impact of COVID-19 and gender inequality, how it has created conditions of inequality, disproportionate burden for women, and what are the different strategies to counter these inequalities. So we have three very distinguished speakers among us, as Professor Swami has already spoken, and Professor Ishtam Mukherjee from Calcutta University, Dr. Manisha Behal, who is the well-known social activist and CEO of Northeast Network, and Professor Sheila Bora, erstwhile she was with Liberia University and a well-known women activist. So now, request Professor Sheila to the man to take over, even the technology has become unresponsive. So I welcome you all to this important webinar on a very important and relevant subject, how COVID-19 has created gender inequality and what are the different strategies, measures to be taken to counter these inequalities. We have three very important speakers, distinguished speakers among us, as Professor Goswami has already highlighted. Professor is coming from Calcutta University, Dr. Manifa Behel, who is a well-known social activist and CEO of the Office Network, and Professor Shila Bora, former professor of Dibrugarh University and well-known women activist. So I would first request the speakers to speak and speak for around 20 minutes or so that after every we can take question answers for around 8 to 10 minutes, and so that is how we go about. So I first request Professor Ishwar to make a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for making me a part of this. Now, I will share the slide quickly so that we can discuss within a short period of time. So, I'll share a slide on gender inequalities and the gender. Some problem. Okay, I'm sharing this. Doesn't know. Yes. So I'll be talking about the gender inequalities and survival for strategies for women. Now, the first of all, somehow there seems to be a disconnect between the disease, the medicinal part of it, the medical emergency, and the socio-economic impact. But actually, there is no disconnect. If you look into the sex-segregated data in the globe, they show that the equal number of cases are happening between both men and women. But there are sex differences in mortality and vulnerability to the disease, and this came out in Lancet March 14th. But what is happening in India? This differential in mortality is having a different story. If you look into the early evidences, not the contemporary, of course, research is being done now. So the early evidences suggest that males share a higher burden of infections, 66% than females, 34%. But females are suffering from higher risk of mortality in India. If you look at the case fatality rate, this is for males, this is 2.9%, and for the females, is 3.234%. And this came out in two papers, two researchers. So this is being corroborated. That India is having a different story of vulnerability. Even the medical vulnerability is having a different story. So the impact is not only epidemiological, but it is social, systematic, and institutional. The social and economic factors have put women at increased risks. So what is happening in India is that due to the health inequality, pre-existing health inequality in the country, pre-existing health inequality is making the case fatality rates of women and vulnerability of women to the disease more. So it's a different story with respect to the world. Now, again, what is the socio-economic vulnerability? The fear of infection of the near and dear ones, violence, the social isolation. This has increased the mental stress. So if I'm going to share the mental health data, that is, I'm not going to do it today because if you look into the mental health stress, because new research is being coming out, it is being very difficult for the women to mentally cope up to the situation. Hard for pregnant women. And this has got short and long-term mental health implications. This has also been obtained by one of the researchers, and one of the research is the dominant research is that the pandemic will be followed by a pandemic of mental health problems. And this is affecting women more and more. Again, since most of the population is being staying at home, women's unpaid and underpaid work stress has increased. UN Women pointed out that half of the global population has been confined to homes. So the care services and unpaid, underpaid domestic work have risen. This has happened with respect to women in India also. Most of the healthcare workers are women, faces are women, the care workers, whether organized or the ASHA workers or the healthcare activists who are there, and the medical scenario, if you look at it, more than half of them are women, and they are within essential services. So what is happening? There's an ILO data which is telling us that in the Asia and Pacific, women spend 4.1 times more than men. So what is happening is that the than men earn more time on all of these activities together with these activities. Most of them are suffering from stress-related problems. The sexual division of labor has become more skewed and not under healthy conditions. So this has increased the vulnerability of women. Again, if I try to take into the cause of the case of the workers, there has been a severe discrimination against domestic workers who have lost jobs. This is an example to show that although the disease vulnerability is higher with respect to women, the economic hardships are more with respect to women. Because when men are losing jobs, there have been severe job losses. There have been severe unemployment. It was there in the pre-COVID situation, but this has increased under the lockdown. Many have lost their jobs. And the families are suffering under hunger and inability to make both ends meet. So what is happening? The economic hardships are more with respect to women. Women of these families are to go out to find some work. And vulnerability in the gender labor relations are on the rise. And this was corroborated by the World Bank. The healthcare workers are at risk. And the pandemic has also saw the pandemic of domestic violence. There has been an increase in domestic violence. If you look into the recorded domestic violence cases with the National Commission for Women, it's a steeply upward rising curve. But see, those are only the cases which have been recorded with the National Commission for Women. The phone calls only they have received. So it's a steeply upward rising curve. Domestic workers are at the risk of losing jobs as well as at the increased risk of catching infections. So joblessness and with increase in domestic violence. Now, why the domestic violence has been increasing? Because the women earlier had the option to go out and reach to the helpers, reach to the aids, go to the shelter homes. The shelter homes are completely shut down. So they have to stay with the abusers. They have to stay with those who have been abusing her. So staying with the abusers and not being able to get out, people have been losing jobs. And the domestic workers, they are losing jobs as well as the increased risk of catching infections. Getting both ends meet, they have to work at home, they have to work outside also, and in outside also increasing the risk. Joblessness has been prevalent, economic brunt. Then sector workers all have become victims. They haven't traveled abroad. So, by contact and by community transmissions, they have got the disease. But the stigma is falling on them. So, there have been various cases where it had, even in the newspaper report, it came out that the disease, the household, the people got it from their domestic mates. But actually, if you look into it, the tremendous infection in the Dharavi slum, which is frightening. If you look into the Maharashtra cases, the tremendous infection among the workers. So where did they get the disease? So why you stigmatize these women? And if you look into the migration, COVID-19 has been synonymous to the trailing footsteps of migrant labor. So migration is a global phenomenon, and India started this migration. India started this circular migration, and this migration from 2011 onwards, it was recognized that if you look into the census data of 2011, it became evident that between 2001 and 2011, lots of people have left their homes in search of jobs. And in fact, this is true for Northeast also. Many women of the Northeast have left their homes in search of jobs. And gender is an important aspect of this migration. Earlier, women had to stay behind to take care of the family and the fields, and agricultural fields. But we saw a phenomenon right from the last decade onwards, that since agriculture and the kind of work they have been doing were not paying, and also due to this sense of globalized world, this sense of delocalization of activities, that you can work anywhere you feel like. So this has brought out more women out of their homes to work elsewhere. Now, what is happening is that now COVID-19 in India is being synonymous to the way, if we just remember, close our eyes, we can see the trailing footsteps. We can see how the migrant came back home, how the plight of the migrants, they suffered, how many of them have suffered, how many women had to deliver their babies on the road and then walk away with their babies. So this has been the story. So women have been the sufferers. Now I come, and there has been a story from reverse migration also. What I was telling is, I come from a state of West Bengal. We just saw that there were many women from the Northeast, particularly in Manipur, in the nursing profession, and they just went off one by one because it has been unsafe here. Yes, it has been more safe in their land. That is true, but it's a case of reverse migration. So this kind of reverse migration, going back to their homes, is there. So the hard impact on women were falling. The hard impact of women were also falling on those who are running small enterprises, because they have not been able to pay back their loans. So they have taken loans from the banks, taken loans from microfinance institutions, started a small business, but in the lockdown, they couldn't sell, and these institutions are now demanding the money which they can't pay. So what is happening at the end of the day? We find women. What are the ways to go in? What is happening is that there is bound to be indebtedness, increasing indebtedness of women. In fact, the increased work has happened due to fetching of water. These, again, lines of women fetching water, this has come up. So the victim of hunger and malnutrition, impact of lockdown fell unequally on women. Increased poverty. So racism, intersectionality predominated, casteism, in fact, minority abusing. So this has predominated the stigmatization, and women are part of it. Social injustice and inequalities reflected in stigmatization. So when we see the coping of strategies, the survival strategies, it would, if this is not enhancing the capabilities, any of this is not increasing the right to health, public health, increasing public health with the gender mainstreaming. It will be a difference from the way in which we did gender mainstreaming. It is a different way in which the country has practiced gender mainstreaming. It is looking the policies through gender lens, I would say. That is redesigning policies of public health and employment through gender lens. So it is going up, coming up with new kind of policies, new kind of alternatives. I think I have run out of time, I think. I would stop here and engage more in the discussions.
Thank you.
So, over to chairperson, and I want to engage more in the discussion, so I'm stopping here for the time being.
Thank you, Dr. And we have set the tone for this webinar, and we have highlighted the various interfaces, economic and social, and how it has created disproportionate burden on women and vulnerabilities. Thank you very much. Now, I will request questions from participants, and we can have around 8 to 10 minutes for questions.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
I'm Professor Lalni, so the Honorary Director of Women's Studies Center, Mizoram University. I'm so happy to listen to Madam Ista Topadaya, and this day, as she has likely mentioned in her presentation, that women migrant workers are the worst victim in the time of pandemic. This is true. So from Northeast India, Northeastern states, like from 8 states, she had mentioned about the nurses of Manipuri serving in different parts of the country, and especially in southern part of India and Delhi, then Kolkata and all. So these people are really actually serving such a great service to the nation. And they also become a family soul honor also. Besides the nurses serving outside the state of the Northeast or Manipur, there are so many women migrant workers who have returned from their own working places. So they are really in need of a kind of economic help, a kind of a helping hand that has to be extended by who? The central government or the state government. Their problem is very immense. So because of their earning, that the family are actually meeting their daily bread. If people are really in need of such kind of helping hand, for that, is there any way out, or if there is any, we call it, kind of facilities that can be provided, or the government is having kind of a welfare measure policies to address this very problem. Thank you.
So can I take all the questions together and then answer?
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am, for your observation. Is there any more questions?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Can I come in, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, sir, I'm Veronica from Chennai. And firstly, ma'am, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. I have a question here. How can we strengthen gender mainstreaming in the health sector, particularly, especially for sexual and reproductive health? Now, during the pandemic crisis and also recovery in the recovery process, especially now people in quarantine centers or in shelter homes, whether they have this access, women are not having access to sexual and reproductive health services. So, how can we strengthen during this time and post recovery? Thank you.
Yes, so can I reply or are there any more questions? Yeah, so actually the first question that what will happen to those women who have returned back? Because there's a reverse migration in the whole of Northeast. And what will happen? And this is, I'll combine this to Veronica's question of how will we do the gender mainstreaming? See, gender mainstreaming was a term which was popularly known after Beijing, in the post-Beijing, that we include gender into the mainstream of all kinds of policies. But what I suggested is that way of packaging gender within all policies, keeping 30% for gender, keeping this for the gender, will not work, will definitely not work with this extreme case of vulnerability with respect to women. It is disproportionate. Women have been disproportionately becoming the victim. And women means already those women who are vulnerable. There has also been a difference between women and women. And so the kind of policies, one is that the national policies may leave out locals. So everything, everything has become very localized. So local policies of empowerment. So local strategies, local bodies are to take these accounts. So decentralized way of looking at the policies and looking at the policies through gender lens. This is what I need to suggest, that not the packaging of the policies and keeping 30% for gender. It's depending upon the vulnerability. All the regions are not equal in that way. So we have to look into the vulnerability, make our policies decentralized, local, through local bodies, through local governments. So local governance will become important through gender lens. So that is one of the options which immediately appeared to me as a social scientist and a gender activist to look at this, to how to make it more inclusive towards women rather than making it exclusive. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Professor Chair. So I
Thank
think
you, ma'am.
let's.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any more question? Is there any more question? If there are no questions.
Yes, Chair.
Hello. If there are no more questions, then let's move on to the next speaker. May I request Dr. Manisha, the CEO of Northeast Network, to make a presentation.
Good morning, ma'am.
Is our chair here? Because other panelists are.
Yes, yes. Yes, Baidu. Hello.
Hello.
London, you're missing.
Yes. Hello. Yeah. Why do you can start? There are some technological hits here. হৈছে আপনি বন্ধ কৰি ৰাখি গৰম হৈছে
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes. Baido, you can start.
Are you telling me? Are you telling me?
Yes. Monisha Baido.
Monisha Baido.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
কোনে সুধি আছিল
Yeah. So this is Monisha. I would like to thank Madhurima for inviting me to this meeting. I think Ishita has said many things which are important, conceptually very clear. And I want to just talk a little bit about the practical experiences that we've had in Assam and in Meghalaya and Nagaland. I just want to say that with this COVID-19, we know the shocks and tremors that have come up with migration, with people being blocked to travel in inter-district, interstate, etc. So the first thing I want to say is about the government. We found with our research, because we are field people, and we've got counseling centers in 6 districts of Assam. We've got counseling centers in Meghalaya, and not in Nagaland. We do more of agriculture work there. But we found young women, older women complaining on the phone to us that they are being harmed, they are being abused. And we tried to find out what the reason is. Of course, the one thing was to give them immediate solace. And but the reason why these are happening is, of course, because they are locked down. And it is we found that men have never, it's such a patriarchal society. But men have never taken responsibilities. They are internationally, nationally known to be the breadwinners. But they've never been the protectors, as it was. So it is the women who protect the children, protect the livelihood, the animals. They know which road goes where, which tap is working, which tap is not working in a public, public road. But the men, if they do the wage labor or they work somewhere, they're construction workers, they get out of the house and that's it. With the lockdown, they were asked to stay home, and that's what they did. And a lot of them have resorted to alcohol, and a lot of women have been telling them to get jobs outside as a matter of, as a result of which they have been domestic fights, abuse, etc. But what is horrific is the way men have cut their wives out. And there's one case in Gulaghat where in the middle of the road, this woman phoned us up saying that, I have run away from my house because my husband is beating me up, and she had a child. Just after that, the man came, picked up the baby and went back home, and she then asked us for help. So thankfully, we have connections with the police, so we were able to get the child back to the mother, and the mother went to her mother's house. So there are about 26 cases we have got of violence. So I think both nationally by women's groups and internationally, there's a huge concern about increasing violence against women. The next thing I want to say is what is the government doing? From Northeast Network, we have been telling the Chief Secretary here, we have been telling the government that you must address this issue
issue of violence. Surely you have something. Can you hear me, everybody?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So then we appealed to the government, I think by 13th April, that these kinds of things are happening. And on 21st May, we got a reply as well as a sort of a notification by the Chief Secretary to say that we must respond to women in distress, women with vulnerabilities. So that was a step ahead. But what we saw missing out of the 17 points that they gave was that it was like a repetition that if the woman doesn't get help at the outpost, then she can get help from the OC. If she doesn't get it from so and so. So there were 4 or 5 points, which is the same topic, but only to say where she can get help. It's okay. Well, what the government is doing is okay. It is that effort is there. But the 2 things that are missing is the budget. Every time you announce a scheme or a notification, you have to have a budget attached to it. And every time you give a notification, you have to have guidelines. It's like the Protection of Women Against Domestic Violence Act, which came up in 2005 or 6. We were a part of it. But when the protection officers, which are the bureaucrats in the social welfare department, were not given guidelines, were not told what to do, they didn't know what the hell was happening. And then again, people like us in Northeast Network have to go from district to district to give training to these protection officers, and they would say, "Oh, etia bujisu, Islam, najanisu, we didn't know that this is what it is," because I think they get sheets and sheets of paper with guidelines, but nobody follows it. So I'm talking about the gap we see in responding to women who are being abused. I also want to say that there are about 70 shelter homes in Afghanistan. They're not working well. Again, it's to do with the budget. Budgets are not there. It is to do with skills. People don't have counseling skills. It is to do with humane and positive attitude towards each other. Because we Indians are so hierarchical that every time a domestic worker comes to take shelter from a shelter home, she will be told to get out. If somebody in a middle class woman gets there, they would say that, okay, you can get shelter, but madam, this is not for you. Why don't you go to so? So it is also to do with behavioral attitudes towards women, etc. The other thing I want to say about the lockdown is about corruption. We have found that never mind how praiseworthy the work of some senior ministers are in looking after this thing, we need to talk about rations. Rations that come to places like Sibokagor, Gulaghat, and all these kind of places. What the hell are these people doing? They're taking the rations and they are actually using it elsewhere. It is only because of some very, very, sensitive people, sensitive young men and women who have talked about it. And therefore it comes out in the newspapers or in the TV channels. Some TV channels are bringing this out. So I think it's again to do with human attitude, and even if there's a pandemic, I don't think we are in a world of sharing or being sensitive to each other because corruption is going on and the poor are again left out. I'll say the last thing, and that is to do with post-lockdown. If we work with women and we found out, if you go to the grassroots, there are many solutions we can find out. In the urban world, there are many things that middle class women, urban people can do. There are many things that might be a different webinar altogether, but for the grassroots people, I think the example of Nagaland is, I would say, remarkable. Northeast Network, because people for the last 7-8 years have been concentrating on indigenous farming. They have been having road shows telling the government the beauty of seed sharing, the importance of sharing seeds with other states of the Northeast, so that there is sustainability. And then the whole issue of having biodiversity exhibitions about the greatness of our soil. When these things happen, I don't think the villages where we work suffered from the kind of scarcity of food that people here were suffering, or even in parts of Assam, let alone the migrants. So for me, the post-lockdown solution would be three. One is to look at multiple securities like homestead gardens. Never mind if you're a peasant woman or a poor family. I know many people are landless. 30% are landless in Assam. So you can have these bagan baris. You can go for herbal medicine. That means you can bring out herbs which could be sold. You could also think of You could also think of getting urban development workers, the activist organizations, to come and give training to people about water management, the use of health care, etc., so that there is an exchange between the village people and the thing. And this is, I am saying it in my perspective because this is how we work. We have been successful in many things, but the last thing I want to say is about nutrition. Assam, Nagaland, all these places have little ponds, they have fish, everything. It is very important for the government to support people in the rural areas for livelihood and for sustenance, for nutrition, for food security, and many securities like that. So I'll just end here. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a lot of cases from the grassroots. So we have empirical cases as to how the COVID situation has created different vulnerabilities here, and in this region, which is generally known to be more women-friendly, otherwise, but how we see the hierarchies coming up in such situation. And you have also, from your own grassroots experiences, have highlighted on possible solutions to counter these vulnerabilities in future, and taking care of food securities, training people in healthcare, in water management, and all these, because these are bigger issues. Although we talk in bigger terms, in general terms, these local solutions are also very important. Thank you, Vaido, for bringing in these examples and cases. Now, these open to questions and comments. Yes. Yes, please, Veronica. Yes. Yes. Silapura Baido has something to ask.
And when I'm speaking, I will touch upon Monisha's as well as Professor Mukhopadhyay's.
Sure. So, is there any more questions or comments?
If not,
Then we can
move on to
Professor Silapura for a presentation. Baido.
Yes. Thank you very much. I would like to thank Tezpur University, Madhurima, and all of you present here today for giving me this opportunity of speaking. I do not have a presentation as such, but I would like to speak my experiences from my personal point of view for these last 4 months which I have experienced as a woman in the COVID situation. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Ishita Mukhopadhyay for her beautiful presentation, which was so factual with full figures and everything. And Monisha, of course, a good friend of mine who's always on the ground, and so she can tell us the real situation. For me, firstly, I come with an example of myself. I'm a woman who's above 65 years of age. And I have personally felt, I have been very, very active. Those of you who know me as a person, a go-getter, a mover, never stopping. But in these 4 months, I have been made to feel that I'm very old, not capable of doing anything, and not to go out of the house and stay indoors, do nothing. Now, this is what many women across are feeling, which is not good for their mental health, I must say. Yes, we have to be careful about our health, but at the same time, women must not be made to feel that they're so vulnerable as that they have to give up everything and be confined to the house. We have our role to play. We have a very important role to play. Secondly, I must say that when we are talking of post-COVID situations and policies, we have to first think of assessing the situation on men and women separately. It is true that COVID-19 is having similar impacts on men and women, but the rate of that impact or the percentage of that impact differs from men and women, and that impact has to be very clearly studied. Now, for example, Monisha has mentioned, as well as Professor Mukhopadhyay has mentioned, how women are confined to the house and their burden has increased manifold. You know, children are at home 24 hours, and it is the duty of the mother to fruitfully engage them. Men are at home. Men who are used to going out, meeting their friends, having a drink in the evening, they cannot move out. And that frustration is brought out on women. That anger is brought out on women. And women have to provide entertainment for them throughout the day. Instead of men helping the women, it is the opposite. Secondly, like Monisha mentioned about the needs of requirements, children being at home, they're constantly asking for something to eat. So the mother is constantly in the kitchen trying to produce something for the children without showing she's angry. Water needs, it's humid. Summer is coming. Water is required. We have to wash our hands regularly. We have to drink water. Water is required. Where do women in the rural areas get water from? They have to go and collect this water. And not always safe. Queuing is one thing. Queuing for water is one thing. But when they have to go out early morning into very, very, lonely areas, again, they are subject to violence. So women have a very, very difficult task domestically. And unless men come forward and feel that they have to share, now it is a different world, and they are no longer worshipped because they are the heroes of a war. They are no longer worshipped because they are the producers of some sort of or they feed the household with the bread, or that they are the powerful people who can develop skills, and women are no men will be worshipped, hero worshipped for that. They have to know that they have to share the burden of the house equally with the women. Then only the COVID-19 situation can help women. This is very, very important. The second very important thing I would like to point out is about the domestic violence, which has already been mentioned. Domestic violence is always, women is the key, whether it is in the home, whether it is in the refugee camps, whether it is in the shelter homes. Women are always the cause of violence, and they do not know where to go once they are sexually abused or they are violent. This has always been the case. It is much worse now because the crowd in shelter homes or in things start increasing much more than even before. So the situation is very bad. There is no sanitation, no hygiene, and women are the worst sufferers than men. As far as economics, Professor Mukhopadhyay has already talked about the employment of women. I would also like to point out one thing. It has become a digitized world now. Like today, for example, when I was called to join this webinar, I was very hesitant. I told Madhurima, I have been speaking all my life, 40 years, but I'm not used to joining a webinar and speaking, and I'm very hesitant. Please excuse me. She said, no, you go on speaking like normal and you come. Now, if a person like me is hesitant to speak on the webinar, how do we expect our young students, our young girls in the villages to come online and study? It is very easy to say that online classes are going on. How many girls can access online studies? And if there is any digital accessibility, the first preference will be for the boys, not for the girls. So women are left out. Many girls have come and said that why are you so, I see on the internet, they're appealing to our ministers and politicians. So why are you talking of online classes? We have no access to online classes. People in Arunachal, my students from Cotton University in Arunachal are writing and saying, Madam, we cannot access. We have no internet to access. So how can online classes help the women? Secondly, all offices, all companies now are going online. They're trying to reduce the number of persons in the offices. And for that, skills have to be developed in the women so that their employment is not curtailed. Now, I have come across women who have come and told me that because they cannot work digitally, whether it is a shop, whether it is a factory, whether it is a company, they are the first ones who are losing their jobs. Now, all these things we have to keep in mind when we are laying down our policies for employment. It is true, and the domestic workers, if you look at it, most of them are women. Migrant women, whose work is not recorded, who are not officially employed, who do not know where to go when they lose their jobs, where to seek the support from. That is what is happening. They don't have any place to go. It is all right to say you cannot leave your people, you cannot leave them from work, you have to pay them salaries, but that's not happening. Most people are losing their jobs, they're not getting their salaries, and they don't know where to go because they are not officially employed. So this is what is happening to the domestic workers. We have already talked of back migration, people coming back, but where do these people get employment, as someone has asked us? So these things are very, very serious, and we have to take these issues into consideration. Then there are questions of health. One thing that always strikes me is that whenever we are testing a medicine, whenever there is a test for, a medical test or test for, say, there is a clinical trial for a new medicine, new injection, we always take men as the sample. We do not think that a similar medicine may have some very adverse effect on women. But very few tests are carried out for women on the same medicine. And now in a COVID situation, I think it is very essential that while medical tests are being carried out, similar trials should be also made for medicine. Clinical tests should be made out on women. So everything, what I feel the solution to the problem lies, like Professor Mukhopadhyay was saying, it is not a question of gender mainstream. We have now to assess very separately the needs of men and women, what they need, economically, how they can sustain themselves, and it will differ from place to place, from situation to situation. The ground realities will differ. How to sort of educate people, how to educate women gainfully, how to employ them. For example, can government not help them or give them work, employment, where there is a demand, where for supplies, for certain, like Monisha was just saying, say agricultural products, herbal products, can government not gainfully employ women where the demand is there? For certain products, demand is there. But we did not see any such steps being included in our policy. These have to be laid down, and we have to very, very keep in mind the gender aspect of this. Because COVID-19 is surely lowering the position of women in society even further. And when we talk of empowerment, when we talk of a gender-neutral society, when we talk of recovery after COVID-19, nothing can happen unless women can live their full lives, and feel useful in society. Then only they can be empowered. Thank you very much. I think I have spoken what I have seen and felt out of these 4 months. Talking to my students, talking to field workers, rural workers, and this is what I feel. It's a very desperate situation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. And you have very beautifully summed up some kind of challenges that women are facing of all ages, and right from catering to various domestic chores from collecting water, starting from that, and how the stereotype roles that women play of caring, nursing, and how these have become all the more bolstered. And how, for example, the online education is creating problems of differential access. So these are very important issues which need to be addressed. Thank you, ma'am, for this very important relevant speech. I would now like to invite questions and observations on Professor Sheila Bora's presentation. Yes.
Is an increase in domestic violence because women are not very authoritative in earning their dignity, but as a first world idea. Can I have answer to this now.
Surely, if there are any more questions.
Any more questions?
Yeah, ma'am.
Sir, I would like to ask that already that pandemic or rather lockdown equality in education sector or going to the additional various parts of the country in rural areas.
I couldn't get this question. It was not clear. Can you repeat it, please?
Yeah.
Sure, ma'am. Then my question is there any probability or what is the probability if there are pandemic or rather lockdown, female will face inequality in education sector or going to the educational institution in various parts of the country, specifically in rural area?
True. Any more, or should I answer these two questions?
I have a question. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Niharika Das from Royal Global University. First of all, I'd like to thank you because it was a very informative session. My question is, can you put forward few alternative livelihood options for women in the rural as well as urban areas, as accessibility to sell few things in the market has become a constraint? So can you just put forward few livelihood options for women? Thank you.
All right, let me answer the first question. I think it is Mr. Niaz Rahman, is it?
Yes.
Yes. All right. The question of dignity, I don't know. I think every man will take that differently. But a man is not used to it. You know, what happens normally, you will see, that a man is, for him, he believes that it is his duty to earn the bread for the household. Right? And he will do that without thinking. He will go and earn whatever he can. He thinks that is his duty. But now, at this stage, when he is locked up in the house and he is told that you help, then he finds that, yes, my dignity is suffering, maybe. That's why he is angry, leads to violence. What I am suggesting here is that there must be a gradual change in the mindset. Yes, many young men are now believing that they have to share household chores equally. But that is a very small percentage. And most men have to come out, they have to believe that this is, days are not like before. Earlier, like if you look at my subject, history, it was only men all over. Why? Because they went to war, they fought wars, they did production, they were in power, they had money. So it was always, there is no woman in history. What happened to half the world? Where is sitting? Not doing anything all through the time when our history was written. Women were doing something, but that was not work. Now, if men have to do that type of work, which did not form a part of history, it is very difficult for them to believe that they are doing any work. See? So they have to change their mindset that that is also important work. Now, look at this with our environment changing. What were women was doing? Nurturing, caring, looking after the environment. That has become much more than what men were doing, fighting wars and earning profit. That is not important nowadays. Nowadays, nurturing and caring, looking after the environment, looking after your children, bringing them up well is become more important than fighting a war or earning profits. So that the men's mindset will have to accept, and they have to come. The second question was about education of women in rural areas. That is something I find very difficult because I still, when the government is talking of digitized education, I still try to tell whenever I have the occasion to have a discussion with government authorities, I tell them that I believe that it is going to take many, many years if we believe that women and men can, or girls and boys can be equally educated through online education. It is just not possible. And women will lag behind even further if this policy is followed. Because we know how many people in the rural areas have access to a computer or to even the internet connection. And if there is any connection, who will get the preference? It will always be the boys, not the girls. So what happens to the girls in those cases? So this is not the only way we can solve our problem. I think, I do not believe that online education can help girls to, yes, Monisha. Yes, Monisha.
Sheila Badu, I just need to say something, but it's also in reaction to what Niyaz is saying. I hope you are there. I want to say that
I can't hear you, Monisha.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
At Northeast Metro, we have a digital film archive in Tezpur. And we have 20 girls and boys from different backgrounds, very underprivileged backgrounds, to learn about filmmaking and making films on wildlife conservation, on social issues, and on issues of deforestation. There is a girl called Khushi. She joined our program, and on 2 occasions she said, my parents are very unhappy with me because I have to work with these boys and I'm staying in a hostel, even if it's a girls' hostel, 82 years. And then she carried on working, and a year has passed. And what she's doing now is training other girls. She's from a place called Dhekiaji. She's training other girls of how to do digital camera work, of how to document issues of women, their mothers and grandmothers. And these girls who are learning from her are also starting to widen their horizons because they're always in Parda. So I want to say that this is how change takes place. And curiously, the father is starting to become very proud of Khushi because maybe for his own selfish reason that she is becoming a popular person in the society and the Gaon Bura and things like that. Second thing is that because we started weaving work in Nagaland and Paripara district, we found that the men would tell the woman to carry on weaving and I will look after the children because she was bringing income. So the issues of income, the issues of livelihood, the issues of your ego are very important for men. To see that the wife is earning and other people in society, in the village council, are happy to see that she is earning money and all. So it is a mix of that, but if I look at the result of it, that woman is having a happier life. That's all I need to say.
Thank you very much, Monica. I agree with you fully. Yes. Yes.
May I add?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. I'm Masaki Purwa. Hello, Badu. How are you?
Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much for your, everybody's discussion was very good. Only thing, I would like to add, these days I have noticed in Facebook, there is a positive sign. In fact, I want to raise that positive sign that there are many women writers, new writers in Facebook. I have seen a lot of women who earlier never wrote, but these days they have been writing stories or poems like that. So that can be, we can add like a positive, vibe among the women writers. More family, family writing, or in that way.
Yes, you are very right. This is, these are the sort of things that we have to encourage. They are writing, they are doing music. Many have taken to music, which can also be a livelihood. Like Monisha was saying, it's very nice that the girls are now coming forward. There is slightly a change in the mindset of the older parents to girls going digital, staying in hostels, coming out to work. But generally speaking, our population is so huge. It's going to take a long time for all this to come. But definitely, change has to come. It will come. Girls were never sent to school. Now they're going to school. I'm sure they will also take to digitization slowly. But the government also has to make efforts that this is available for the girls in rural areas. Net connections must be there, internet connection must be there, they must do it. So all that is there. As far as the employment question is concerned, my study would be that, we have to take the new ways of finding livelihood. This is a new world again that we are coming to. Like Monisha was saying, these new ways of yes, Monisha, you would like to say something?
So I just want to make an addition to Mandakini's remark. I'm very happy to hear what she's saying. And in our organization, we are encouraging a lot of young women, both in urban areas as well as rural areas, to send us what they are writing so that we can popularize the literature that are being created by women.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the information.
So thank you very much. I have answered all the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Badu.
Thank you, Badu.
Thank you all the speakers actually, and for a very enlightening session. And now, as the chairperson, it's my turn to speak a few words. I have nothing more to add, but as a sociologist, we also have certain observations, and I see that, of course, the pandemic has created all kinds of disproportionate burden on women. There is no doubt about that. Our society is patriarchal, hierarchical society. So there is no doubt about the kind of burden it has created. Although initially there was this hope that it will create condition of sharing when men will also confine to their homes, but this hope was light soon, as we soon started replacing domestic violence and intimate partner violence all over the world. It's a global phenomenon, not confined to us. And so things are obviously not going to change very soon. It will take time. But what I see is that the whole implications or the impact of pandemic of women is actually a very nuanced issue. While on the one hand we have seen the further marginalization of women, on the other hand we also see, as Mondakini has pointed out, that it has liberating effect on section of women as well. So it is therefore it's a gender question, but it is also a class question. It is all, again, if you talk about the online education, the accessibility, Silabara Bhai has rightly pointed out, the accessibility itself is a problem. Obviously, it's a class issue. But within the same home, it might again become a gender issue when you have one laptop and it will be, the girl student may not have equal access to it. The boy might have greater access. So it becomes a class issue, but within their household constraint, it becomes a gender issue. So these are, but overall, to my mind, although these some liberating effects we have seen on women, but on the whole, I think the disproportionate impact or implication of women, the burden on women has come out very clearly. Women have become the frontline workers during this pandemic, as doctors, as ASHA workers, these accredited social health workers, nurses, or even as police. And my personal, conversation with some of such activists have clearly brought out the fact that the kind of anxiety that they suffer from every day go back home, they are afraid that they might take the infection to carry the infection to their children. So this is a kind of big burden, and it adds to the mental pressure. Similarly, I have seen how online education, apart from the differential inequalities that we have already talked about, here also, who are the most of the teachers? School teachers, they are women. And there is a great burden on them to finish the curriculum. And many of the frontline workers, fighting the COVID pandemic, they are also sharing this or taking up this added burden as parents to finish this online education, take care of the online education. On the part of the school, there has been a pressure on the teachers to finish the online education as early as possible. And on the other hand, as parents, these frontline workers are faced, not only for frontline workers, for that matter, all mothers at their homes, they are facing this added burden to care of, apart from all the domestic chores that they do. But here, this online education law, several parents have told me and frontline workers how it has created a burden in them. Because you see, domesticity has it, as you all know, has its own constraints. When people go out, maybe the mother has some time for her. But now, it's creating a kind of constrained space for her, because all the time she is bound to take care of, or of the other members of the house. At the same time, it has also created, I believe, additional burden on young girls as well, and women. As it was pointed out, as caregivers, now it is all the more burdensome on them to take care of the ills in the family or elderly. So girls' education that way might also suffer, because it has added a new burden on her. So there are a lot of, migrant workers case. And we know how, of course, migrant workers is it's again a very nuanced issue. You see, my own work on migration has showed that women who are left behind home, they also enjoy some kind of liberty and in decision making, etc. There are other problems as well. It's not that is the only story, but some kind of empowerment decision making that they enjoy when the husbands are outside. But as they come, some of them share with me that this will go. Although in subject matters, this might be helpful to them because there are cases of harassment, etc. in the village itself. But coming back to husbands, while it will take away this decision-making power, but on the other hand, would also give them some kind of safety. See, therefore it becomes a very nuanced issue. But anyway, this is not my time to speak for long. These are some of my observations. So how to tackle this? I think there is no one-size-fits-all solution, as Manisha Bhargava has also pointed out, that we must find solutions also at the local level, at the grassroots. But at the same time, what are the approaches that we can take while making policies? I believe we all talk about give service to the issue of gender budgeting. But who makes it? Who are the people who are responsible for gender budgeting? So gender budgeting is not enough. You must have, whether in formulating health policy or education policy or whatever, a government must form 4 groups constituting mostly of women. That is very important. You cannot leave it to some bureaucrats who may not have similar understanding of sensitivity to a women's problem in policy. So I think that becomes very important. That you, for every policy decision or policy, the groups which are involved in making such policy must have a majority of women in making such policy. And I also believe that so far as domestic violence and issues are concerned, even at grassroots level, we must have groups, again, of young men and women, maybe in different and sensitized and to take, not, I'm not saying surveillance, but taking stock of such incidents happening in their neighborhood. I mean, many young men and women, they are much more sensitive to these issues, and they might become the future, what should I say, protector of human rights. They have to fight. They might become the future crusaders. So let's also encourage them, to my mind, to address such issues even at local level. NGOs may also play a very important role, but government support is very important. So I think these are some of my very what should I say, esoteric thoughts that I had on this issue. I was not supposed to speak, but actually it is you who have instigated, triggered this anyway outpouring. But thank you so much. We have all learned a lot. Professor Iskamati Sarkar, thank you so much, ma'am. Dr. Monisha Behal, Professor Sheila Prabhayu, thank you so much for such an illuminating session. Now I invite Dr. Madhurima Goswami to offer the vote of thanks.
Yes, there are many questions in the chat box, so I can see.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, sure. Of course.
So some of the questions which I find yes, I can answer. First is there have been disabled vulnerabilities. And there's we have only asked women have more questions that was more vulnerable. So which I find easily so women are vulnerable. So women are always represented in this
So it is visible, it has make it visible. So what is positive? Negative is throughout. But what the positive thing is that it has come to the eyes and it has come to the minds of many people who were not thinking about it earlier. So looking at policies through a gender lens is again something in which I think it's possible now. Otherwise, in fact, my friend Monisha and Professor Boda, we all have been talking about many of the things for a long period of time. And sometimes, as Monisha Behal has rightly said, that the shelter homes, there has been so much of, people won't hear, people won't listen. Look, it's a small problem. So look, it is a problem which you people you are only talking about this as a problem. But now it's not like that. It has made visible the invisible. So the kind of possibilities of positive execution of post-COVID coping up, I think I can see at least a little silver lining if I can call it like that. That is, at least it has made us aware. It has exposed the inequalities to a large extent. It has built upon the inequalities and exposed it to a large extent. Thank you. Now there are other questions to be taken.
If there are more questions, one or two questions may be taken. If there are
Yes, it's not exactly a question. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the wonderful presentation that has come from the very experienced and then very well-known great contributors for the women cause. So I think it is very enlightening from the presentation that has been made from each of the speakers, even including the chairperson also. So I, on behalf of the participants, would like to extend my heartfelt thanks, and I also wish at the same time, best of luck, yeah, during this pandemic situation, that to keep health, wealth, and stay safe and fit. With this, I actually say thank you once again. Thank you.
Any more
Any more
questions?
questions? No.
May I
May I now
now
invite
the
the Gate Study Center,
Dr.
Dr.
Gopinath
Gopinath Goswami, to give you the oversight.
We have come to the end of very lively session. We were actually, because this is our first webinar and we were a little skeptical about how things are going to go with the connectivity problems and service problems.
How our speakers, they have facilitated everything. They spoke with all the quantity, they spoke with all confidence, and then also raise certain questions in the success of this webinar. There have been a lot of questions. I know we have a lot of questions, participants. I think these questions can be put, we can mail these questions and we can have answers by those questions, because what we thought was like, the offline seminars and conferences, we must end in time. And I apologize for not being able to start in time because, there are a lot of these connection problems and we hope to do better. One thing that has come very vividly and very strongly is that pre-COVID and post-COVID, what we see is it has worsened the situation of women. That is very clear. That had things been right, this would not have happened. And so there is a fear, I think Professor Ishita Mukhopadhyay, she's somewhere, because she's an economics person, she must give it up to this, that what will happen to this labor of love and labor of economics, because end of all conferences and seminars, we always come to the conclusion that change the mindset. And she has been very positive by saying that this she sees the silver lining, and all of us, like her, also are being positive, and we think that we will be able to, by organizing, by connecting, by networking, by coming together, at least we will be able to come to certain conclusions, arrive at certain insights. I thank Professor Ishita Mukhopadhyay. Ma'am, she is also our East Coordinator for Women's Studies, All India Women's Studies Group. Ma'am, that you accepted and you confirmed, and I hope to you. We are always, Monisha Bell, ma'am, she's always there with us. So she's not a guest, she's a host, So I'm thankful to ma'am, and I'm also thankful to Professor Sheila Bora, she's one of our advisory board members. And lastly, and finally, the chairperson of the session, he's our guest university person, Professor of Sociology, Dr. Chandra Kumar Sharma. I'm thankful to you, sir. So in the end, I say a good namaskar and we meet in the next video. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
এনেকে নহয় মেম এটা ৰুমত মোৰ অৱস্থা আপুনি বহি লওক ঠাণ্ডা